Back on MorningLine, we're talking firearms in the state of Tennessee with John Harris, Tennessee Firearms Association, some of the legislation the governor will be signing and likes. We've got some calls we're going to get to real quick. John, just wanted to follow up on your one point, which I understand what you're saying about the constitutional right. But I mean, it is brought up at times, and even Scalia did at one time. He conceded that when the drafters of the Constitution did so, they had no concept of an AR-15 or no concept of some of the powerful weapons that we have today. Big difference between AR-15 and a musket.
There is, but the courts have actually looked at that issue, and they said that at the time that the Second Amendment was written, the civilian population typically had firearms of equal military suitability as the British government, which was the strongest military government in the world at the time. And so the courts have said consistently that have looked at this issue, including the Tennessee Supreme Court twice, the U.S. Supreme Court in Miller, and then later again, that the guarantee goes towards weapons that are suitable and without a snapshot of freezing it in the 1700s that are suitable for military modern engagement. Miller said that quite clearly in the 1940s, which is a U.S. Supreme Court decision, and it has been repeated. So the fact that they may not have foreseen the development of the AR-15 doesn't preclude the fact that they fully intended the citizens to have weapons and access to weapons that were at least compatible with what the military had at whatever point in time it would be applied.
And I understand that in terms of the military and the citizen in terms of self-defense. The problem with that, at least it seems to me, is that the weapons today, a single weapon as opposed to a musket or something today, in the hands of one individual, can produce mass casualties like something never imagined in the past. And so while the idea of having that to counteract a military incursion or something, as unlikely as that truly is to happen here, is crazy in the hands of one person when we see these mass shootings. It's too easy for some lunatic to get hold of one of these weapons and just walk in and slaughter, dozens of people with that one weapon. That's the problem. That's the problem.
That is a potential problem, but the problem arises out of our inadequate willingness to deal with health care and the lunatic, as opposed to focusing on what kind of weapon a lunatic might have access to. Because you can't disregard the rights of an entire nation because a sporadic few people might have substantial mental health issues and need treatment, and the government's ignoring that for whatever reason and not providing a mechanism to identify and provide mental health treatment for people walking around in public.
Let's take some phone calls. We've got next up is James. James, good morning. Hi, James.
Good morning, men. How y'all doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Okay, this is kind of complex, but I'll try and walk us through this. I live in a HUD-assisted apartment complex. I'm a senior citizen, a former gun owner, and we were told at lease signing. That means anybody that comes in here, no firearms are allowed on the property or in our vehicles. Is that legal?
And you're in a HUD property, so it's a federal housing then. John, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
That's HUD assisted.
Gotcha.
I have not read a case on that issue, but I would think that there may be some. It raises the curious question of, can the government, although it's prohibited by the Second Amendment from infringing a right, condition a benefit that it's not even legally authorized to provide on your waiving of a constitutionally protected right? I mean, it's not required to provide you HUD-assisted living. You're not required to accept it, but contractually, if the two of you get together and agree to it, can they condition that financial assistance based on your willingness to waive that right? Same question can be applied of, would it be constitutional for them to say, if we provide you HUD-assisted living, you're going to have to waive your right to vote? I don't think they can or should, but the government doesn't seem to treat the right to own arms with the same hands-free approach that they treat the right to vote.
Gotcha. All right, let's go next to, I think we have Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. Good morning.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that bill. Seems like that bill is one-sided to only fit with white men and white women. I'm a black woman, and if I went in and bought a gun and I wanted to carry it on my side in my purse, and I go out of my car and walk down the street, is the police going to arrest me? Because it seems like that's what that bill wants everyone, whoever's Hispanic, whatever race you are, you're going to be put in jail, but the white man can keep that gun and wave that gun and shoot any damn person they want. And it seems like that bill is really one-sided. And I think it's time for us to get rid of some of those Republicans down there because some of them are malicious.
All right. Well, John, clearly there, if she has that feeling, the issue would not be in the bill and what's allowed. It would be whether or not there are biases in law enforcement or others in how they handle situations, I would imagine.
The bill is completely neutral on age, race, sex, religion, or national origin. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter under that language of that bill what category you may fit in. It basically says if you can legally acquire the enhanced permit, which is a higher standard than just owning a gun, that you can carry it. So she would be able to, if she could legally possess the firearm, to obtain one, and then under this bill to carry it in the very narrow, limited range of spaces that it allows people to carry. And then she raises an interesting question that I do hear quite a bit is, and this came up in the debates on this bill, is if you're carrying under this bill, as a police officer, let's say you carry it openly in a holster, can they come up to you now if this bill passes and say, hey, wait a minute, I want to know if you're legally carrying that gun? And there are cases that the federal courts have decided on other issues, mainly drug law cases, where the answer is probably quite clearly, if the conduct, carrying the weapon openly, is otherwise legal, then that does not give rise to a probable cause basis for a law enforcement officer to stop, question, or interrogate you about your conduct or the circumstances. So I think that's going to take some getting used to, because in Tennessee, with the permitting system for the last quarter century, an officer could ask you, based on the way the permit law was written, if they saw you with a gun in public, to produce your permit, and you had to let them inspect it as well as the gun if they asked.
And when we talk about open carry as opposed to concealed carry, under the law then in Tennessee right now, as you said, this woman, Kathleen, or someone else who has a weapon could have it on their holster. If you have a larger gun, could you have it slung over your shoulder and go walking around with that as well out in the open, correct?
No, not in Tennessee. Speaker Sexton made that comment recently on the radio. And the problem with openly carrying a long arm is Tennessee presently doesn't allow it unless it fits with one of several specific exceptions, like you're hunting or you're on your own property or you're at a gun range.
Okay, I wanted to clear. Yeah, go ahead.
But if you were talking like what we saw with the protests at the Virginia Capitol a year or so ago, they were openly on Capitol grounds with long arms. You do that in Tennessee, I'll guarantee you're going to get stopped and checked to see if the weapon is loaded or unloaded. If it's unloaded, technically you might be able to get away with it. If it's loaded, you'd be arrested or charged. And people need to understand that in Tennessee, our legislature lives in Wonderland, where Alice comes from, and an unloaded weapon doesn't mean there's no ammo in it. It means not only is there no ammo in it, but there's not even any ammo in the vicinity of the gun. So I've seen people charged with having a loaded weapon when they had no ammo with the gun, but the person they were standing next to had ammo for their gun that would fit both guns.
Interesting. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. We'll come back with more of the phone calls right after this. Stay with us.